Gill at Close Call Sports. This video is all about the unwritten rules of baseball. What is an umpire supposed to do when one of these rules is supposedly violated? And this specifically relates to the Fernando Tatis grand slam hit on Monday night in Texas, with the Padres leading by 7 in the 8th inning and the count 3-0. 3 balls, no strikes when he hit that grand slam. One of the unwritten rules states that you shall not swing at a 3-0 pitch if your team is winning a blowout game. So he did, and the Rangers reacted. And specifically, the next batter, Manny Machado, first pitch to him was thrown behind his back. What's an umpire to do? So there are 2 things to analyze here. The first is the unwritten rules, first of all. In general, whether it's swinging a 3-0 pitch or bunting to break up a no-hitter, an umpire has no enforcement responsibility whatsoever, whether you like the unwritten rules or you hate them and think that they're stupid. You have no opinion as an umpire during a game. All you do is you observe that an unwritten rule has been violated. In a prior video with the OSIP Foundation, osipfoundation.org, we talked about an umpire's greatest trait. I said an umpire's greatest trait is sensitivity. And it was in the context of a coach yelling at an umpire saying, "You're too sensitive," when the umpire throws him out of the game. And the umpire can turn around and say, "No, the greatest asset I have is sensitivity." This is what I mean. If an unwritten rule, such as a 3-0 swing in a blowout game, or a bunting for a base hit, or in a no-hitter, or flipping a bat after a home run, admiring it at home plate, walking across the pitcher's mound after being retired, walking in front of the catcher on your way to the box, there's tons of these unwritten rules. But the point is that when you notice that one of them has been violated, what your job as an umpire is to simply try to figure out how the opposition is going to react. If they're going to take offense, because we get offended about things, and if they take offense to it, that's something to log in the back of your mind, so that when this bleeds over into a situation where they decide to retaliate by violating a written rule of the game as opposed to an unwritten rule, now you're ready. Case in point, Tatis hits the granny. Next batter, Machado, takes a pitch behind his back for ball 1. Is that a violation of a written rule? It depends how you read official baseball rule 602C9, intentionally pitching at a batter. If you believe that that was an intentional pitch thrown behind Machado, you have a violation of that rule. And you have 2 options after you have a violation of the intentional pitch at batter rule. You can either warn both teams that the next such infraction will result in the ejection of the manager and the pitcher of the offending team, or you can immediately eject the pitcher who did it. Either way, you have 2 options. What you cannot do is ignore the violation. The only acceptable response in doing nothing in this situation would be to say that pitch was not intentional. But if you think that pitch was intentional, yeah, by rule, you have to do something. The plate umpire here is Nestor Ceja. He's working his first career MLB regular season game as a plate umpire. This is a tough spot to be in, so he gets the crew together to convene them. Now, you'd like to act without hesitation, but at the same time, the rules and the general instructions to umpire says, hey, if there's a murky situation, get the crew together, take some time, figure it out. There's really no harm in doing that. As long as you talk about it and you acknowledge to both teams that you've seen what has happened, whether you figured that it was intentional or not. But as far as the unwritten rule thing is concerned, because Chris Woodward, the Rangers manager, after the game, basically says he confirms that he didn't like what Tatis did. There's a lot of unwritten rules that are consistently being challenged in today's game, he says. I didn't like it personally, you're up by 7 in the 8th inning, etc. So he's holding a grudge. The Padres manager, Tingler, says it's a learning opportunity, he'll grow from it. So he's kind of admitting that it was wrong, and it was a violation of the unwritten rules. Again, whether you think the unwritten rules are stupid or not, doesn't really matter. What matters is the reactions by the actual participants in the game. If they don't take offense to it, then it really doesn't matter. But if they do take offense to it and they retaliate by doing something against another actual written rule, now you have to be involved and you have to take business based not on the unwritten rule, but on what is actually being violated as far as an official baseball rule in the book is concerned. In this case, it's intentionally pitching at the batter. If you feel it's intentional, warn or eject. If you feel it's not intentional, you do nothing. But no matter what happens, in the back of your mind, you have this heads up, especially for Corey Blazer, who's going to be the next scheduled plate umpire for this series. You have in the back of your mind, hey, these teams have a disagreement about something. Maybe the Rangers feel that they were disrespected by the Padres. If they're holding a grudge and they don't get over it, they might retaliate again, in which case I know, heads up, I already have this thought process going, so I can immediately warn or eject as appropriate, rather than having a situation explode on me that I'm completely unprepared for. That's the umpire's role in the unwritten rules of the game. Not to enforce the unwritten rules, because that's not the job, but to simply log it, put it in the mind, be sensitive about how the other team reacts, to get ready and pregame or pre-prepare or pre-pitch, however you want to call it, for what comes next. This is Gil, Close Call Sports. Visit us online, closecallsports.com, at Umpire Ejections on Twitter and Facebook. Our sponsor is Out West Officials, and we will see you on the site.